I became a journalist because when I was a kid I watched a film called All the President's Men. I know that's a cliche, but it was true, and I watched two guys in suits without guns, without car chases, bring down the most powerful man in the world, and I was completely hooked. I made a mistake. I went to university and did law because my careers master said I was good at history and English, and I quickly grew unhappy with law. I carried on and took my degree and everything, and then I saw an ad in The Guardian. People don't really believe this, but it's completely true. There was an ad in The Guardian that said wanted a lawyer who wants to be a journalist, and I thought, wow, I'll give that a go. And it turned out it was Euromoney, and it was a law magazine, but that was the start. And then I went to a magazine called Business, and then the Sunday Times rang up, and then I was away. And I don't think there's any day I've not loved the job. I mean, it's fantastic. What distinguishes us from other media is the immediacy. We've got deadlines. I know I have to produce a paper by 7 o'clock this evening or 8 o'clock this evening for tomorrow. I think I'm surrounded by some fantastically talented, inquisitive, intelligent, but also very funny people. I think one of the things, whenever people leave journalism, the thing that they always come back to, one of the reasons why I've never left, really. I mean, I've had approaches down the years to do this, do that, and one of the things that always comes back to is the energy and the humour of the newsroom. I don't think in broadcast, I've been into TV newsrooms and they're just a bit more bureaucratic. We don't have hierarchies. Any reporter can come in here. The best thing is when somebody stands in my doorway and says, I've got a great story. And that is the best thing any editor can have. And all those people out there are looking for stories. And it's just a great feeling. It's a great buzz, and it's like that every single day. There's not a day when it's not like that. Every single day I come into work and we start with blank pages. And by the end of the day they're filled. And that's an amazing process. I mean, what a fantastic privilege. And they're filled with all sorts of different types of stories, pictures, puzzles. But the best thing of all is when a reporter stands in my doorway and says, Chris, I've got a really great story. And most of the time I know they have. Sometimes they're barking mad. That's my job. But actually, my first reaction is, tell me, wow, that's fantastic. Let's get it out there. Let's do it. And it's a great feeling. And it's probably the same as a football manager who's got a striker who can't stop scoring and can't stop winning. It's the same feeling, and it's a real rush of adrenaline. It's really, really exciting, and nothing can replace that. Obviously, there's the impact of the internet on our business, but putting that on one side, of course, it's made the job a lot easier. If I find that somebody's sourced something from Wikipedia or something like that, and it's wrong, then there's hell to pay. But we didn't have Wikipedia before, and if you had to find out something before, it could take forever. And now we can communicate with people across the world, and they can reply in seconds. And I can look up somebody across the world and find out about them in seconds. It's more challenging in the sense that in the past there was only the competition of the other papers. So you were competing against, in our case, The Independent. We'd be competing against The Times, The Guardian for the following morning's slot, on the newsagent's shelf. Well, that's gone. I mean, if a story breaks this afternoon, everybody piles onto it. Everybody in the world, not just the UK, not just print, everyone will pile onto that story. And somehow we've got to stay ahead of it, and we've got to, so the level of competition is fierce, but that's good as well. It's good fun. I suppose the head-to-head competitor for the Independent would be the Guardian, although we're friends as well. I mean, I talk to Alan Rusbridger fairly frequently. I think we're all grown up enough to know that we're not always at each other's throats. What gives you the biggest lift in this industry? It's not just sales. It's the best thing is sort of as good as sales. I'd like more sales, we all would. But yeah, the best thing is when someone says, "Do you see that in the Indie?" Or "That started in the Indie." Well, that means you're then competing with all the press. So if I see something in the Daily Mail, I read all the papers all the time and all their websites all the time. And if I see something in the Mail that we haven't got, I want to know why. Likewise, I guess Paul Dacre on the Mail is doing the same thing. So we're all competing against each other, but not just the Mail. The BBC, and of course blogs, but also internationally. I mean, New York Times. We're all competing, but we're players in that world. It's great. I can't imagine Britain without newspapers. Everyone says to me, they're going to end, it's only a matter of time, and I say, well, what's going to replace us? Our brands are so strong, and what we're delivering between the brands is so different. I always say that the newspaper is a friend, and your friend can make you laugh, make you cry, it can annoy you, because friends do, but you go back to them because they're your friend. You love them to bits. You get familiarity with a friend. So if they suddenly change their clothes or their hairstyle, you think, what the hell, what are you doing? What have you done that for? What's wrong with you? If I move the crossword in the Independent, the phones will not stop ringing. People want that familiarity. They want the trust, and they want it day after day. I prefer it that they read in print right now, because that's the easiest way for us to make money. We have a cover price, we have adverts, they pay, advertisers are happy, that's how we make our money. We're still not found a way of making money on the internet, and we have to make money. It's not just that we're ruthless capitalists. We employ people and they need to feed their children and they've got mortgages, and so we have to find a way of making money. And the easiest way right now is print, but internet is growing all the time. They all matter to me. I mean, and if somebody writes to complain, and they might not write a letter anymore, it can easily be email, it could even be something on Twitter. But if somebody complains about something on our website, we will treat that just as importantly as in print. So they all matter, and it's all part of the same stable, it's all part of the same brand. So in that sense, there is no difference. Until the iPad came along, we were all struggling with how we could display what we do in print on the internet. Steve Jobs comes along with the iPad that actually starts to look like it looks like a piece of paper. That's what it is. It's a pad, notepad. And it looks like a piece of paper, and it's rectangular. And we can start to work with that because that's what we're used to, and we can start replicating pages on the iPad, and that has to be the future. I still find it hard to fathom, hard to conceive of people sitting on breakfast TV or looking at iPads. It's much nicer to hold up a paper. If you give me a newspaper, I can get to page 10 quicker than on an iPad. And then I can turn back and I can go page 10, back to page 7, I can go to the end, I can go that way. Everything is quicker and it's more tactile. Well, obviously it's more tactile, and it's a nice feeling. And I think there are a lot of people who like that. I've got 3 older children and 2 little ones, and the older children who are in their early 20s, they don't read newspapers. They will read them if they're in the house, and obviously they are in the house because their father's works in newspapers. But generally, they don't read newspapers. They will pick them up if they're free or available, or there's somewhere and there's a newspaper lying around, they will read it. But yeah, I mean, they're used to looking at things on screen, which I think is a shame, because they're missing something from newspapers. I like to think that in time they will come back to papers, that they will realise that there is something actually quite beautiful about this thing. There's a whole art form there. There's a lot of work that goes into producing a newspaper and making it look great, and choosing the pictures, choosing the layouts, getting light and shade, getting everything just right, and that a lot of that is lost on screen. And I think if only we can get papers to them and say, actually, look at this. The thing about the internet as well is that over time, I can't help thinking that they will lose loyalty if they ever had it in the first place. Because on the internet, you're only a click away from the next item. You just click the mouse, you're on to the next thing. A newspaper's different. Newspaper, you're bringing into your life. It's either you're going to the newsagent, you're buying it, you're putting it in your bag, you're reading it, you're saving it to read later, you're keeping it in your downstairs loo to read later. Whatever you're doing with it, you're bringing it into your life and it's there. Whereas the internet is, well, you get halfway down the story, I'm bored with that, click, go on to the next thing, click, not bothered which brand that is. Well, it could be anybody, it could be Al Jazeera's story, it could be BBC, it could be CNN, it could be Guido Fawkes' blog. I'll click on that, read that, I'm bored with that, click on the next thing. And you won't read the whole product. I mean, the thing about newspaper is when we make a newspaper, and we do it every single day, we're creating something that has a beginning and has an end and has a middle, and it's a whole product. It isn't just dip into the story on page 3, read half of it, chuck it, go to the Guardian, read a bit of theirs, chuck that, go to the Times, chuck that. That's the internet experience, and it's not as fulfilling. I think we're in great danger of beating ourselves up as an industry. We are in decline, the numbers say so, but the numbers are still high, they're still strong. And more than that, the brands we have are still very strong. They're huge. They don't need any introduction to anybody. Even my kids who don't read papers, if you went to them and said, The Times, what is it? Daily Star, what is it? Express, what is it? The Mail. These are part of the fabric of British life. What gives me a buzz is being part of that. And yes, there's negativity, and we've got Leveson. I mean, Leveson was about a few bad people who did some things, some bad things. I don't think we need to exaggerate it more than that. I mean, he actually says, Leveson says in his report, he pays tribute to things, the good things that journalists do. He was always going to be negative. He wasn't asked to hold an inquiry into the good things that the press do. That would be bizarre. So he was always going to look for the bad things, and he found some. And we knew they were there anyway. There was nothing he said that I was remotely surprised by. He also said there are some good things. And actually, the good far outweighs the bad. The positive aspects of journalism far outweigh the few bad. There's absolutely loads to be positive about. The industry is in decline. We know that. I mean, people have got alternative ways of reading things. I understand that. But every day, the numbers are huge. And if you look at my newspaper, The Independent, every day it's read by 80 to 100,000 people. More, actually, in terms of readers. They're just the people who buy it. But each copy is read by 2 or 3 people. We've got a sister paper called The Eye, which we only launched 2 years ago. Every day it sells more than 250,000 copies. Now, put that together, we're already well over 300,000. How many products in Britain, how many companies in Britain sell 300,000 units every single day? And we're at the one end of the market. You go to the Sun end and the Mail end, their numbers are in the millions. And they're doing that every single day. And it's not, I don't know how many Mars bars are sold in Britain every day or how many cans of Coke. But it has to be something, these are products that are selling millions and millions of copies every single day. And that's amazing. And the numbers are still strong and they're holding up. The Independent, the newest paper around, 26 years old. Well, actually the Eye, which is our sister paper, is even newer. So we don't have the long history. I can't go out there and say, guys, remember we reported the Crimea War. That's not in our history. But I can go out there and say, we had the first and just about the only, I think I'm right in saying the only, print interview with Osama bin Laden, where Osama bin Laden said to Robert Fisk in, I can't remember the year now, I think it was 1996, he said in the interview, he told the British to get out of the Gulf because things were going to happen. And, you know, that was his interview. It was it was an amazing interview at the time. And of course, horribly, it all came true. We led the world on Bosnia. We covered that in huge length. We had eyewitness accounts from the Tiananmen Square massacre that were amazing. We did Spycatcher. I mean, we told the British public how MI5 was plotting to bring down Wilson. I mean, these are in our very short history. More recently, what's The Independent done? We were one of the papers, I mean, ourselves and The Guardian, that led on hacking. Only this week, I mean, you know, if I look at this week, we've carried a story about a Russian supergrass being found dead in mysterious circumstances in Surrey. We took climate change seriously, very seriously, and when other people were being sceptical, we were saying, no, hang on, look at this, and we were doing it day after day after day. And it's those sort of stories I'm most proud of. Newspaper industry is littered with examples that have changed the world for good, and that's actually what I think we do. What I'm most proud of, and I think what sustains a lot of people in my newspaper, is that we actually think we're improving the world. Now, it may sound very pompous. I mean, it makes me sound like the Dalai Lama. I'm not the Dalai Lama, and I've never been Mother Teresa, but we do believe that. And so if you look at the stories that we're most proud of, and the stories where, you know, we're feeling we're making an impact, they're all about exposing wrongdoing in high places, exposing waste of public money, exposing corruption, getting messages across the public that possibly politicians don't want them to hear. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Take that away, and actually nobody else is doing that. I mean, I sometimes think that some politicians would like to see newspapers disappear, but I do think we're making the world a better place. What do? We aggregate information, it comes in, we filter it, we make it more intelligible, we try and make sense of it, we tell people if something they've heard somewhere else might be right or might be wrong. We make the world a more easily understood place for them. We don't live in an open society. There are people in high places who'd like us all to think that this is an open society and you can easily find out something. You can't. Part of our job is to shine a light into those dark places. Papers that invest in investigations and do them well, and I would say The Guardian. I mean, and I hope The Guardian would say the same thing about us. But The Guardian, the Sunday Times, Telegraph did the MP's expenses. I mean, if Telegraph had not done that story, we would still be thinking that our MPs were all our MPs were leading honest lives at Westminster. The Telegraph said, "Hang on a minute, look at this. This is what they're up to." Amazing. I don't think there's an issue of the Daily Mail where I don't admire something in it. Look what they did with Stephen Lawrence. I mean, Stephen Lawrence, to go on the front page of a national newspaper and say murderers when no one's been charged, the police have failed in their investigation, and you, the newspapers, decide you've got enough evidence and you're going to say these guys killed someone, and you're going to say murderers. You don't say might be murderers. You don't hint there was a mistake. You're saying murderers. And that's what they did. And that is absolutely amazing that they did that. And the risk that they must have taken and the bravery of Paul Dacre at that time was sensational. I want people to forget the bad. The bad was overblown. It was essentially one or two newspapers that were out of control, that weren't being run properly, with one owner who had been allowed to become far too powerful. So but that's all done. That's in the past. We know about that. Put that on one side. Concentrate on the good things that papers do. And just, I mean, let's not forget, I mean, hacking was exposed by other newspapers. It was The Guardian and The Independent. We exposed hacking. You know, without us, we still wouldn't even know hacking existed. So, you know, we did that, and we're newspapers too. I hope that people take away the good. I think there's a great delight in papers. I do think there's been a change for the best. I think that the tabloids are more sensible than they were, more responsible. They're not going as crazy. I think the public appetite for the kiss and tell stories is not as strong as it was. I might be proved wrong. I could easily be proved wrong on this Sunday. There may be something, but generally there's been a toning down, and that actually can be a good thing. What would be terrific is if some of the resources that were going in that direction, going in the bad direction, were directed to doing some good, and the same level of investigation that was being applied to celebrities was actually being applied to things that really matter. That could only be good, and that, I think there's an element of that happening. So tabloids, some of the tabloids improving their behaviour, some of the bad people possibly have left the industry, and that could only be good. That media owner is not as powerful as they once were, not as dominant. Politicians are not in so much thrall of the press, and vice versa, and same with the police. So things have got a bit better, and I think you're seeing real value now on investigations, on exposés. Possibly because of Leveson, people have grown wise to newspapers, and they can smell a rat in a story. They can see it's bogus. They can query a source. Everything's becoming a bit more grown up, and that can only be good.